With me now to discuss all this, my colleague and co-host for tonight's Town Hall, Joy Reid, the host of AM Joy. Also with me, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Cedric Richmond, Democrat of Louisiana. Congressman, let me start with you. What is your reaction to ABC's actions today?
Well, I think it was appropriate. I think it was swift, and I think it was warranted. So they made a quick decision, the right decision, and I applaud them for it.
Joy, I have to say, I mean, you and I were talking about this today. Roseanne has quite a history. I mean, it's not just this tweet. She said something similar about Susan Rice back in 2013. She traffics in really deeply crazy conspiracy theories. You really got to ask a question of, like, what exactly did ABC think it was getting?
Nostalgia. I mean, you know, part of the lure of Trumpism is that it does play to a certain nostalgia. And, you know, the data bears out that a lot of it is nostalgia for sort of an imagined 1950s, right, when they were more orderly in a lot of people's view, relations between the sexes, between the races. And so there's that nostalgia part of the Trump appeal. And what the networks, and I think what ABC was looking at, is that there's also just a nostalgia for a kind of sitcom, a kind of television experience that's also bygone. And obviously, given it opened to 22 million viewers or so, that is true. People want to look back to those past characters that they grew up with, that they had affection for. The difference with Roseanne, of course, is that, you know, once after her show was launched, you had the incident with doing the national anthem that was really controversial, that the person that she is and the character of Roseanne are very different people, and they're now more in alignment. And I think for a lot of people it's been jarring, but for the fans of Donald Trump, it was affirming. It was saying, here's somebody who's portraying who we are, who's portraying our kind of people. So I can understand why the network said, look, Trump just won an election. Let's try to get some of those 60-some-odd million people to watch this show.
Congressman, you wrote a letter, and it has the title, sort of an open letter, Dear White People, which is a name of a movie that had been out in theaters, about kind of your experience. You're the head of the Congressional Black Caucus at this moment, as we're having this kind of bit of a reckoning around a bunch of incidents that have piled up around the country that people, I think some people, white people particularly, are just sort of paying attention to. What do you want to communicate?
Well, I just want people to know that, one, you can't judge a book by its cover. Normally when I'm on your show, Chris, I'm wearing a suit. Today I decided to dress down because I'm that person that when I'm not wearing a suit, white people will clutch their purse or cross on the other side of the street or just assume that I have bad intentions because of how I look. And I think that we have to get past that. So let's go all the way back to Trayvon Martin, who had iced tea and Skittles, but George Zimmerman perceived him as a threat. And then it comes that interaction between black males, law enforcement, or wannabe law enforcement, and we end up with a young African-American male, unarmed African-American male, that's now dead. We have to get past that. So you can look at the Starbucks incident. You can look at the 4 African-American women who were playing golf, and people called the police on them because they were going too slow. So, or the black family that was barbecuing in a park, and they called the police on them. At some point, the police have to make better decisions, but then again, our white fellow citizens have to stop perceiving African Americans as a threat to them simply because of the color of their skin.
What's striking, Joy, to me, what the Congressman's talking about in terms of some of the kind of more implicit or at least unarticulated biases people have when they call the cops. In the Roseanne situation, and both in her, you know, how she has performed online, what she said about Muslims, Palestinians, all sorts of groups, even before today, it's just explicit rhetoric of bigotry. And there's a real question about how much that is, the ground for that is shifting in favor of it, certainly before today.
Well, I mean, if you
Absolutely.
think about, you know, the so-called, oh, sorry, Congressman.
No, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, okay, no, I was going to say that, you know, the other part of the Trump appeal, and if you look at a lot of his followers, especially online, was this sense that political correctness, right, that the left was policing speech in a way that didn't allow people to make jokes or comments or Facebook posts that they felt were in bounds and that people of color felt were out of bounds. And I think one of the results of the 8 years of President Obama is that you had a whole group of Americans who felt straitjacketed in the things that they could say and get away with it and not get in trouble. And I think that one of the things that Donald Trump has done is sort of unleashed a sort of permission and said, listen, you can be who you are. Let it fly. You're allowed to do it because I can do it. And I think he became the avatar for being able to, you know, put forward a kind of speech that people felt had been stifled. You're hearing the same debate about college campuses, and they're not allowed to speak. It is interesting that, you know, people on that side of the line carve out the NFL as the one place where they don't feel there should be this, you know, open zone of free speech for the players who want to protest police brutality. But other than the players, there is this sense that, you know, the Trump era, you know, the Trump era means we can say it. We can say whatever we want, and there aren't going to be consequences because the President of the United States has sort of said you can do it.
Does it feel that way to you, Congressman?
Well, absolutely. The president has brought bullying back into mainstream, and people see what he's able to do and get away with, never apologizes for anything from mocking a disabled reporter to all of the things that he consistently does. So he's an enabler for all of this hate speech and these actions that are going on because he's feeding into it. You won't hear him say anything about this incident. You don't hear him really man up or act like the commander-in-chief and have this conversation on race. I mean, it's really, the sad part of it all is that it stems right from the White House to Main Street. And I'm just afraid that the division that he plays into purposely and strategically is going to create a bigger divide in this country between law enforcement, between white citizens and black citizens. And I think that it's a dangerous game that he's playing just for his political gain.
All right, Joy Reid and Congressman Cedric Richmond of Louisiana, thank you both for being with me.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.